surviving 6 days straight on dry land, laying 600,000 eggs in a single clutch. In some parts of the world, this creature is so aggressive that it leaves the water, climbs ashore, and devours even pigeons. The African catfish's biological record seems to perfectly align with that of a top-tier ecological threat. And now, this 20-kilogram predatory machine is pushing Brazil's natural ecosystem to the brink of collapse. Whether the river water is crystal clear or as thick as chemical waste, it continues to expand exponentially, disrupting the natural food chain and eliminating any species that gets in its way. An economic blunder by humans accidentally opened Pandora's box. To what extent is South America's ecological system being destroyed by a fish capable of breathing air? The scene on the Meia Ponte River, which flows through the Goiânia region of Brazil, resembles the scene of an ecological catastrophe. Many decades ago, beneath the shade of dense green bamboo forests, this place was a breeding ground for countless beautiful and biologically valuable native South American fish, such as the piau, the painted catfish, and the ipslam, the piranha. Local fishermen depended on this diversity for their survival, but today, when they cast a line into these murky waters, the only thing that pulls with a force capable of breaking even the strongest braided lines is the African catfish. The disappearance of the native species did not occur naturally. It was the result of systematic elimination. The African catfish, whose scientific name is Clarius garriopinus, was shaped by evolution to become an absolute dominator. It functions like a gigantic consuming machine on the riverbed. Thanks to the structure of its mouth, which can open to its maximum, it wastes no time tearing apart its prey. A single attack by an adult generates such an intense suction force that it can swallow a native traíra fish whole in an instant. The predatory profile of this species surpasses all limits of the aquatic world. Analyses of the stomach contents of African catfish in Brazil revealed a shocking truth. They don't just eat fish. Their diet includes shrimp, crabs, small reptiles, the eggs of other aquatic species, and even birds. Waterfowl, such as herons, wild ducks, and coots, are frequently dragged to the bottom by that enormous jaw as they walk along the riverbank. The presence of the African catfish produces a trophic cascade effect, a collapse that begins at the top of the food chain. In its African homeland, its numbers are controlled by crocodiles, pelicans, and large tigerfish. But in the waters of central Brazil, it has no natural enemies. This ecological vacuum allows it to easily seize the dominant role, destroy the food source of other species, and devour its competitors as well. But how can such a large creature thrive in polluted rivers where the oxygen level is so low that other fish species collapse in just minutes? The answer lies in a biological weapon with which nature equipped it. Most fish breathe by absorbing dissolved oxygen from the water through their gills. When water is polluted with household waste, fertilizers, or industrial byproducts, the amount of dissolved oxygen drops drastically, causing mass die-offs. But the African catfish considers even the most polluted waters paradise. It possesses a special biological organ called the suprabranchial respiratory organ, a complex structure that functions almost like a terrestrial lung. This organ allows it to surface and breathe air directly from the atmosphere. Therefore, even if the oxygen concentration in the water reaches zero, it poses no problem for it. Furthermore, scientists have recorded that this species can withstand ammonia levels and toxic pH values that no South American fish can tolerate. When river pollution kills native fish, the African catfish cleans up the carcasses, occupies the available space, and turns those poisoned waters into its own kingdom. Its resilience reaches an even more astonishing level when it is taken out of the water. A real-world test conducted by local fishermen in Brazil yielded a result that defies all biological laws. When an African catfish was thrown onto dry land, it managed to survive for 6 consecutive days. It finally succumbed to extreme exhaustion and severe dehydration, but did not die from suffocation. Its defense mechanism activated perfectly. When it senses that water has disappeared, its body begins to secrete an extremely dense and viscous layer of mucus that completely covers its outer skin. This armor acts as a sealing membrane that prevents evaporation, the prayer of water within its body. And what's most terrifying is that it doesn't lie still, waiting for death. Unlike common fish, which merely flounder uselessly on land, the African catfish uses its extraordinarily strong pectoral fins to propel itself. It moves powerfully across cracked earth, traverses fields, wades through mud at night, and seeks out new pools or river and lagoon systems. This ability to walk on land is a nightmare for environmental managers. You can't isolate this species by building a dam or draining a lagoon because it will simply come ashore and move on to another ecosystem. With such catastrophic survival skills, how did an African creature manage to cross the Atlantic and enter South American territory? That's when we have to confront the ruthless intervention of humankind. Nature never creates an absurd confrontation between the African catfish and Brazil's river ecosystem on its own. This invasion is an artificial catastrophe, born of human greed and a lack of understanding. In past decades, the global aquaculture industry desperately sought the most profitable fish species. They needed a fish that grew quickly, yielded a lot of meat, ate almost anything, had low raising costs, and near perfect disease resistance. The African catfish emerged as the ideal economic solution. It was imported en masse to Brazil to supply commercial production farms and pay-to-fish recreational systems, an extremely popular business model in that country. Humans believed they could confine a perfect survival machine within floating cages and artificial ponds. But nature always finds a way to break down any wall. During torrential rainy seasons, the water overflowed the ponds and breached the containment walls. Thousands of African catfish escaped, swept away by the murky current, and entered Brazil's pristine river systems. Furthermore, a segment of the population, lacking ecological knowledge, deliberately released this species into the open environment, believing it posed no threat. Releasing African catfish into the South American ecosystem was like injecting a highly destructive agent into a body without antibodies. Native species never evolved to face an enemy with such strength, speed, and hunting strategy. Human intervention forever altered the river's evolutionary trajectory, and once this monster entered the natural environment, it set in motion another large-scale threat, an endless breeding machine. The reason native fish like the piau, the caranya, and the tigerfish are disappearing from the Rio Meia Ponte is not only because they are being devoured. The deeper cause is that their very future is being destroyed from the reproductive stage onward. Along the river lies a dam belonging to a long-abandoned hydroelectric plant. According to their natural biological behavior, each year native species must swim upstream and migrate to shallow, safe waters to spawn. However, the enormous concrete mass of the dam completely blocks their path. Millions of native fish are trapped in stagnant water just below the dam. And that's where the African catfish appears. This area is accidentally transformed into a perfect hunting ground and an ideal breeding ground for the invasive species. While the South American fish are trapped and panic, the African catfish not only devours the adults, but also completely consumes the spawning grounds. At the same time, it sets its own reproductive cycle in motion. The biological data on the fertility of this species is truly astonishing. A female catfish doesn't lay a few hundred or a few thousand eggs. Modern studies show that an adult female can produce up to 60,000 eggs per kilogram of body weight. Let's do a simple calculation. A 10-kilogram female hidden at the bottom of the Melaponte River can release more than 600,000 eggs in a single breeding season. Incubation also occurs at a brutal speed. The eggs hatch and become fry in just 24 to 36 hours, depending on the water temperature. From birth, they possess a killer instinct, grow incredibly fast, and can begin reproducing before they are a year old. Hundreds of thousands of fish are born, with no natural predators to control their numbers, grow at an extreme rate, and then produce tens of millions more eggs. This terrifying multiplication creates an invading army that decimates the river's biomass and pushes the native ecosystem toward total exhaustion. The collapse of a few rivers in the state of Goiás is already a tragedy, but now a much darker scenario is unfolding, a direct threat to the very heart of the Earth. The concern of scientists, including biologist Raquel Pires, is no longer limited to the borders of urban areas. The true threat, on a continental scale, is already knocking at the door. The African catfish has begun appearing in tributaries of the Ypsilon and Jiu Turbo rivers in southwestern Goya, and is slowly advancing toward the last ecological red line, the Araguaia River system. Why is the Araguaia so crucial? Not only is it one of the largest and most biodiverse rivers in central Brazil, but it is also the artery that connects directly to the Tocantins River. From the Tocantins, water flows directly into the Amazon basin. The Amazon basin is a sanctuary of the global freshwater ecosystem, home to more than 2,500 identified fish species and thousands more yet to be discovered. It is an extremely complex and extremely sensitive food web. If the African catfish successfully enters the Amazonian food web, what will happen? Unlike the arapaima or the caiman, native predators that always depend on stable aquatic environments, the African catfish possesses an extreme capacity for survival, the ability to endure the harshest dry season in the rainforest, crawling through the mud and holding its breath. It will survive precisely when native species are at their weakest, and from there it can easily consume what remains of the ecosystem. Its presence in the Amazon would no longer be a local pollution problem, but rather the trigger for an ecological crisis capable of leading to the permanent extinction of hundreds of invaluable species on a global scale. Faced with such a dangerous invasive species, the authorities and the environmental scientific community had to establish strict rules. An implicit but extremely firm directive was issued for all fishermen never to apply the catch and release policy for the African catfish. The message is very clear. When your hook pulls this creature out of the water, never return it to the river. It must be completely eliminated from the ecosystem, and definitive measures must be implemented to ensure that it cannot continue to spread. The fact that it's not used as food is also a health warning. African catfish that hunt in rivers saturated with industrial waste and urban garbage can accumulate very high levels of heavy metals and toxic bacteria in their flesh. They eat human waste, and humans can't eat them back. Eliminating this fish has now become an act of ecological defense, a desperate attempt to save the last fragile native life. The African catfish invasion in Brazil is clear proof of human arrogance. For momentary economic gain, we broke with our own hands the defense system that Mother Nature took millions of years to build. Nature always has its own laws of balance, harsh and implacable. Any attempt to manipulate or rewrite them will always have a cost. The current war in the rivers of South America is no longer just a war between two species of fish, but a fight to correct one of humanity's greatest mistakes, before all that remains beneath those black waters is the shadow of an immortal predator slowly advancing toward the shore.